I would like to call the meeting to order, and I would like to ask those who are able to stand for the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Thank you. Trustees, this is a special meeting. Specifically to the purpose of this meeting is to consider the excursion matter. So I would like to first ask if any trustees need to declare a conflict of interest. Okay, seeing or hearing none, we would like to move on to the first item. Just Trustee Laskin.
Mr. Chair, just a question. I know there are two motions being moved tonight that we've been given. I'm wondering if it's possible to have some copies of those printed for the audience that has come here so they can see what's going to be discussed and not have to read it on the screen. I think that might be helpful. I'm happy to. Thank you very much.
So we have one of the motions. The other one is a slightly simpler one, fewer lines, I think, so we can put that up on the.
Thank you.
So just to close this item, any declaration of possible conflict of interest? Seeing or hearing none, we will move on to the next item, update on excursion. I would like to start off by asking our Acting Director, Luis Frisco, to start with an update.
Thank you, and thank you, Acting Chair Shan. I'm appreciative of the board's decision to call a special board meeting so staff may provide an update on the events of September the 18th. We have received a great deal of outreach outlining concerns about an excursion of approximately 15 TDSB schools to the Grassy Narrows River Run. And we take these concerns very seriously. We too have concerns about what occurred in relation to this excursion and believe additional information is necessary to properly assess the situation. The board remains committed to implementing the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada's calls to action as outlined in the newly revised multi-year strategic plan. As we move through Truth and Reconciliation Week in Canada and as we approach the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation on September the 30th, it is important that we recognize the efforts and express our gratitude to the TDSB Elders Council and staff and the Urban Indigenous Education Centre for their ongoing efforts within our board and beyond as we all strive to fulfill our commitments to truth and reconciliation. The Grassy Narrows River Run was a community event organized in support of the Grassy Narrows First Nation and their efforts to address mercury contamination impacting their community. This excursion was organized as an educational experience for students to hear from Indigenous voices about the ongoing challenges faced by the peoples of Grassy Narrows. Some of the concerns related to students who may have witnessed or participated in protest conduct. We also heard concerns that the events as reported were not aligned to permission forms described in the excursion. Along with those expressing concern, we have heard other views which represent a range of opinions on the excursion and the events reported. TDSB began an investigation into the circumstances around this excursion immediately upon hearing the concerns. Staff began with initial conversations with schools that took part in the excursion to better understand what happened and to help identify the scope of the investigation. Last week, in parallel with our investigation, we shared that we would be reviewing the field trip procedures and made clear that students should not be participating in organized marches, rallies, or protests on a school field trip. We have issued direction to system leaders and have directed all schools to hold on any such excursion. We recognize that accountability and apologize to students and families who were impacted. We made it clear that if the investigation concluded that TDSB policies, procedures, or professional standards were not followed, we would take action, including disciplinary action. Yesterday, the Ministry of of Education announced that it would be investigating the excursion to Grassy Narrows River Run. As a result, we have suspended our internal investigation and will refocus our efforts to cooperate with the ministry's investigator to enable an expeditious and thorough investigation. At this time, we have not yet received any direct communication from the ministry regarding the details of the investigation, but will advise the Board of Trustees as soon as we receive further information. We live in complex times where our connectedness to world events happens in real time, on the streets, and through social media and technology. The Ontario College of Teachers has been instrumental in providing guidance to educators in navigating the changing world through their development of professional advisories on topics such as anti-Black racism and the use of electronic communication and social media. Educators are valued professionals who plan educational experiences for our students grounded in the Ontario curriculum. The Ontario College of Teachers sets professional standards that protect public interest and guide decision-making. The board recently wrote to the Ministry of Education to request broad collaboration and to provide guidance regarding complex matters. We look forward to receiving their response, as we expect this will provide needed clarity for school boards and educators across the province, not just at the TDSB. Public education is the foundation of a just and caring society. This is reflected in the Ontario curriculum, which thoughtfully outlines learning expectations for all students across all grades. There are secondary courses that outline learning expectations for Indigenous studies and the concepts of political thinking. Courses include civics and citizenship, equity and social justice, world issues and contemporary First Nations, Métis, and Inuit issues and perspectives. Curriculum also helps students develop their understanding that political significance is something that may vary for different groups of people. The Ontario curriculum is written with grade level and course expectations. Students are expected to think critically, listen to opposing perspectives, discern opinion from fact, and to understand how history, policy, and practice affect society. Specific and grade level curriculum requirements set an important foundation for students, and we remain committed to supporting students in these critical areas of development. While we await the recommendations of the ministry's investigation, our educators are expected to teach the Ontario curriculum without attending marches, rallies, or protests, and while upholding their professional obligations. I once again apologize to students and families who were impacted. Trustees, we are happy to take your questions, and we will do our best to answer, and are mindful that because of the investigation is now in the hands of the Ministry of Education, we will not be able to answer any questions about their investigation plan or process. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Associate Director. We'll now take speakers, Trustee Pay, and then Trustee Alexandra Rodman-Lolka. Anybody else? We'll make a list. Go ahead, Trustee Pay first.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question to the staff is regarding policy. So what kind of policy our board having to govern political demonstration during school hours? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chair, through the chair. There are a number of policies that relate to a variety of different issues, but there's also, as Acting Director Srisco mentioned, the professional standards of the Ontario College of Teachers. And there are a variety of different standards in place that guide that as well. So there are a number of matters that are in place. For this particular matter, I would rely on the professional standards under the Act. Thanks.
Okay, Mr. Chair, sorry, I'm not sure I understand correctly. So maybe I rephrase my question. Do we have a policy in place which encourage political demonstration during school hours?
Through the chair, sorry, I was supposed to stand up. As I mentioned before, there's no specific policy that talks about rallies, marches, and events like of that type. But not every event is covered by a policy. There are professional standards under the Ontario College of Teachers that I mentioned earlier that would cover this type of, these concerns.
Okay, so understand we don't have specific policy, so what is really board mandate or position regarding students staging a political demonstration during school hours?
Thank you, and through the chair, I would welcome Policy Advisor Plotnikoff to speak to this question.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chair. We have multiple policies and procedures, in fact, 11 policies and 15 operational procedures that touch on certain aspects related to political activism or activities, political messaging by partisan restrictions. At the same time, I would not say that we have one specific separate policy or procedure just dedicated to rallies and participation of students or staff in the rallies or political rallies. Thank you.
Okay, I have a follow-up question is, so moving forward, what's the board position regarding governing such a political demonstration by the student during school hours?
Thank you, and through the chair, if I understood the question directly, you are asking what is the board's position on policy? And respectfully, I would articulate that policy is written by the Board of Trustees, Trustee Pay. Once policy is set, staff take the responsibility of creating operational procedures. And as I indicated in my statement, both in written form and again this evening, we are reviewing our operational procedures and have given very clear direction to our leaders to not attend policies, rallies, or protests while the ministry investigation is underway.
Thank you very much, Madam Director. Through Mr. Chair, I have my last question. So as I understand, there are some really young students, like age 8 or 9, participate. This is a political rally. So moving forward, what's our board position regarding those young kids which are involved in such political rally and chanting slogans which were inflammatory, were divisive? How can we prevent that happen in the future? Thank you.
Thank you, and through the chair to Trustee Pay. Trustee Pay, I'm going to be assuming that when you're using the word board in your question, I think that you're meaning about operations.
Yeah.
So I think that is your question about students who are of a younger age than the curriculum expectations that I outlined. I think those will be important questions for the investigation scope as far as what are curriculum connections and so on, and what exactly happened with those students and analysis of the excursion form and so on. So those are, I think, important questions that I have no doubt will be part of the investigation.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Trustee Pay, I think you have a motion, so it's a
right.
special board meeting, so you only speak once, so you'll have to introduce it now.
Okay,
You sit
all
down
right.
and you won't be able to introduce it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is highly significant special meeting of the board called to deal with an urgent and critical situation that places public trust in the board and the staff in jeopardy. The student excursion to the grassy narrow river run resulted in serious allegations that 100 students were allowed or even pressured to chant inflammatory and divisive slogans. The Premier of Ontario and the Minister of Education have weighed in to have ordered an investigation of the incident. Last week, the board issued 2 press releases apologizing for the harm done to the students and their families and promising an investigation and alluding to potential disciplinary action. This motion commits to the board to full cooperation with the provincial investigation and requests the minister to conclude the investigation by December 1st and to make the report transparent and to the public. I would like to express my gratitude to the board staff for their assistance in refining this motion and to many members of the board of my colleagues for their contribution in drafting this motion. It is my earnest hope that the motion represents the united consensus of the board and reflects a unanimous determination to earn back the trust of the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Pei. And before we move on to the next speaker, I want to make sure that we have a seconder in public. Is Trustee Hastings, you're seconding the motion? Thank you very much. So we have a mover and a seconder for this motion. We have the speakers on going with this matter. So do you want to speak next, Trustee Lockhart-Redmond? Go ahead.
Good evening. I've spoken a lot in this room about the dangers of rising anti-Semitism, the fear the Jews are feeling in 2024, and what enabling this says about us as a board, as elected officials, and as a society. I won't dwell on the implications of putting Jewish students in harm's way, the humiliation of indoctrinating their peers against them, and the deep betrayal that these students were allegedly subjected to at the hands of the adults deputized by us to educate them. To be completely clear, the anti-Semitism displayed was heinous. The hurt is profound, the humiliation of our children is unforgivable, and the work of restoring the broken trust between this board and the Jewish community is something that will need to be addressed. Because I am not yet consigned to believe that the people in this room are comfortable with public education in this city being off limits to Jewish parents who will not accept the denigration, belittling, slander, ostracization, and emotional and verbal abuse of their children at the hands of the teachers that we employ. I am temporarily shifting focus because I believe that the TDSB is at a crossroads, and as elected officials responsible for public trust, we need to answer some fundamental questions about our mandate and about how we steward the trust of the public, and particularly parents. Parents in this city choose to entrust us with the thing most precious to them in this entire world, and in exchange, they get a world-class education for their kids and a safe space for them to flourish, to grow, and become part of a community. That is where the obligations of our staff begin, but is also where their rights to these children end. They do not get to overrule, undermine, or circumvent parents in recruiting these students to their preferred brand of activism. The accounts demonstrate that trust was violated here. Students were not only exposed to controversial and potentially hateful speech as part of the course of their school day, but also potentially put in harm's way. A protest of this sort can be a volatile environment by its nature, and many such protests around the country and around the world have turned violent in recent months. If these teachers had decided to drive a wedge through their classroom by pushing politically divisive opinions on their students, that alone would cause concern. The fact that students were subjected to potentially dangerous, geopolitically polarizing event during school hours off school property, seemingly in violation of TDSB policies, is unconscionable. Worse still, I have heard reports that parents were misled as to the nature of this field trip, and parental consent was either not properly obtained or obtained under false pretenses. If this is true, I find it difficult to overstate the damage that these actions have done to this board's reputation, to our mandate, and to the fundamental trust that underpins the existence of this board itself. The only reason any of us are here, the only reason to elect school board trustees in the first place, is to safeguard that trust that parents and taxpayers have placed in us, and to be accountable to those parents, those taxpayers, and our community members. I, for one, would like to be able to look my constituents in the eye and tell them that this board has policies in place that protect their children, that this board ensures that the resources that we marshal are for the purposes of educating them, and that this board is ultimately accountable when our staff falls short of this mandate. Integrity here means that we have policies, we should uphold them. Where our staff falls short, they are held accountable. We need to confirm what happened here and communicate that accountability swiftly. Answers were needed yesterday. There must be an investigation, it must be swift. This cannot be allowed to drag on for months, nor can it be buried in bureaucracy. We all deserve answers. There's no reason that this investigation shouldn't be swift. We know which schools were involved, we know which teachers were present, we know who drove the process of obtaining parental permission or failing to do so, and disturbingly, there is no shortage of reports from parents, social media content, media coverage, and firsthand accounts, all evidence of the corroded trust between our board and the people we are meant to serve. Time and time again, I've seen the policies of this board have been breached with no accountability. It is a disturbing trend, and it cuts to the fundamental question: what good are the policies that we put on paper when they're not backed up with accountability and enforcement? As a trustee, I'm beyond concerned, and I want to be very clear. It wasn't just some students who experienced harm. All students present were exposed to political indoctrination. We have failed all our students, not just the Jewish ones. I have a long list of questions that I don't expect answers to tonight. I would like to read them into the record and hope that they will be answered in the course of the investigation. Who approached the schools about this demonstration? How did it come to be that 15 different schools participated? How and who vetted the event for appropriateness for a field trip? Was the event accurately portrayed to parents in the authorization forms? What was the role of teachers in encouraging students to join the demonstration? For those who did, what disciplinary actions are being taken? Is there veracity to reports of TDSB students being told to wear blue to identify them as colonizers? Is it true that a Jewish student was told they'd get over it after being told to chant anti-Israel slogans?
Trustee.
Did TDSB teachers participate in the anti-Semitic chanting? If so, what consequences will be taken? And more importantly, what education will be required for the teachers who were present? And what re-education are we committing to for students who are subject to this political indoctrination? My final question.
Wrap up.
My last question. What is being done to enforce the board's social media policy, particularly for TDSB teachers who inflame the issue on social media while an investigation is underway?
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Rodman. Next is Trustee Laskin.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Things have changed since I put out my update on Sunday night, but I put out my update to try to clarify for parents and community members who had written what I saw on social media and how disturbing it was. Until there is a thorough investigation, things are not proven, but social media and pictures tend not to lie. And we have seen many, many, many photos, many, many, many pictures, many texts, many emails, and I have received firsthand accounts from parents, and not just from Jewish parents, who are very upset because they felt misled, and that's a breach of trust, and that's very disturbing. What I know to be factually correct is that we have reached out to the ministry on more than one occasion to ask for their support, because as a school board, we have limited resources, we have limited expertise in some areas, and over declining budgets year after year after year, we have fewer and fewer central staff. On September 11th, we wrote to the ministry again to ask them to help us about our growing anti-Semitism and other concerns of hate, because our data does not lie. Our schools are microcosms of community, and it's a fact that anti-Semitism has risen within the walls of the schools in the Toronto District School Board. And we need to address it, and we need to address it in ways that require mandatory education, frankly, because unless there's mandatory common education for all on modern anti-Semitism, which reflects Zionism as well, and in proper definitions, we'll never get anywhere. Everybody comes to it with their own bias, their own perspectives, and we will not all feel the same. And I think that's really important because I've heard from Jewish parents who feel very different than I do. And I've also heard from parents who aren't Jewish that don't even know what they don't know. And frankly, things were tense prior to October 7th. But since October 7th, I think there's an experience of trauma that is being felt that is very hard to articulate, but everything is elevated. Everything is elevated when we've seen windows of synagogues smashed, when we've seen children's schools targeted, when we see week after week after week protests that hold up signs, not just calling for the annihilation of the democratic state of Israel, but for the annihilation of all Jews. And as a Jew in Canada, I've never had to deal with that before. And you worry for our children, and you emphasize the fact that if Jews don't feel safe in our public schools, no one is safe in our public schools. So from my perspective, fighting anti-Semitism and all forms of hate within our system is a core integral value under the multi-year strategic plan for belonging. You cannot belong if your identity is being questioned. And I think what the Grassy Narrows River Run exposed was that I certainly didn't know about the run prior to the fact. I didn't understand about the field trips prior to getting the information. But I did see it on Wednesday. And our board statement didn't come out until Thursday at dinner time. And that left a big gap of the unknown. And people filled that unknown gap without the board taking a very strong stand. So we need, I'm not going to go over all the questions I asked in my update. Trustee Lalka Rotman covered most of them. But the other thing we need to do is think about proactive communication to dispel rumors, to dispel myths, and accept responsibility and accountability when in fact it's being questioned. And that would go a ways to increasing the public trust as well. And I thank my colleague, Trustee Pei, and all my colleagues around the table who worked together on a motion that I'm hoping we all can support. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Laskin. I don't see any other speakers on the list. So Trustee King.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think much of what I would want to say has also been said, so I won't repeat too much. But obviously, there's been a lot of dialogue and a lot of people weighing in from different roles and different perspectives, as we heard. And I just want to acknowledge that I do know that it has been extremely concerning and stressful on different fronts for different people, and that's important to acknowledge. I also appreciate a few folks have just refocused us back to the role of trustee, which is also what I tried to do through all the considerations here. And really appreciate that, my colleagues and I are here to ensure that our policies are created and upheld in such a way that we meet our legal obligations and our strategic priorities, that they are well supported as well. I think that we are all going to benefit from a thorough investigation that is managed from multiple perspectives, and that will help us gain the understanding of what occurred so that we can determine the appropriate response accordingly without prejudgment. Many of my colleagues here on the floor and through the conversations that we've had working up to this are asking very, very important questions that I also support. I know for me, one of the things that really came to mind is, given that there is a certain inherent risk getting to and being in any public space in the city right now, and given the tremendous value of learning outside the classroom that we've heard a few people speak to as well, How responsive are we to the clauses within our excursion policy that speak to consideration and risk and contingency planning? So I think those are the kind of opportunities that this investigation is going to lend to us and allow us to prioritize some of that review without making those prejudgments, again, as we heard. I do have a question for staff, and then I do have a comment to close as well. But we heard from staff that the internal investigation that had been initiated has been suspended to allow for the ministry's investigation to run its course. I wonder if you can just speak to elaborate on the decision to suspend so that we understand why that's the course of action.
Through the chair, whenever we have an external party, especially if it's regulatory, governmental in nature, that have decided they will be conducting investigation, it's very common that there has to be a priority in terms of the investigation, so you don't have one person being interviewed by different investigators at the same time, and you also don't eventually have different sets of facts because different investigators are doing that work. So as the ministry has publicly announced, they have decided to do the investigation. And of course, as a school board under the Education Act, we will follow the ministry's direction on that. And we'll be happy to cooperate it. Thank you.
Thank you for helping us and helping the public understand that as well. I think I just want to close my time in light of it being Truth and Reconciliation Week. I really just want to acknowledge and express gratitude for the learning that I've gained. I think we heard something similar from my colleague earlier, but again, in the course of doing the background work required to give this good consideration, it provided an entry point for me to learn more about climate justice, to learn more about health justice as it relates specifically to Indigenous people in this province. So I know that it hasn't been the messiest, it's been a bit of a messy course here, but there is a benefit that's come out of it, and I just want to acknowledge and again express gratitude for that learning that is so important as part of our personal journeys, but as part of our professional journeys as trustees as well.
Thank you, Trustee King. We have Trustee Sri Skandaraja and then Trustee Dawson.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. I just have a question to the movers. I just would like some clarification on the motion. So I'm looking at B1. I would just like to know through you, Mr. Chair, what exactly does that mean? Are we expecting the investigators to look at all of our policies and procedures, like apart from the field trip policy? Yes. I would like some clarification on what that means.
Thank you, Trustee Sri Skandaraja. Trustee Pei, would you like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Trustee Sri Skandaraja, for your question. I think this is really about, the ministry taking a position. They're going to do a full and thorough investigation in terms of our policy. Because when they're looking into it, I think it's really beyond our board's mandate, what they're going to look into. I think I suppose, the ministry is going to look, fully and thoroughly regarding our policies. Thank you.
Okay, so my understanding is we're asking the ministry to look at all of our policies and all of our procedures, even if it's not connected to field trip policies and procedures.
I think it really is about the questions, what the policy really connected to this field trip? What the policies, what really causes it happen or prevented this happen in the future? I think it's all policy as long related to this incident. I hope as the ministry can look into those policies.
Thank you. So just a suggestion to the movers, a friendly amendment, if you could just include the word relevant policies, because the way I know it's a technical thing, but the way I'm reading it, it sounds like we're asking the investigators to review all existing policies that might not even have anything to do with this, right? Like our service animal policy. So to me, I'm just thinking how somebody would read it, and it seems very broad in the mandate. And so maybe making it more specific to this particular matter.
I think it's really it's not really board direct the ministry how to do their investigation. I think we can make a recommendation, and I think the ministry is going to make the decision. So I mean, the whole motion is, but we're going to fully cooperate with any type of investigation with the ministry. So I think that's the main message. Also, we want to make this policy, this report, open and transparent to the public. So I don't really think it's really, we make amendment, adding its relevant policies to this motion is really important. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. No, I think my suggestion is just, you know, we don't have a choice. There is an investigation. And I know you're saying, through you, Mr. Chair, that we're not suggesting anything, but we are, because we're requesting something in addition. They're going to do a thorough investigation. You know, I have faith in that. Yes, I was just trying to make their scope more specific to the issue as opposed to pulling in policies that has, you know, nothing to do with this particular issue, because I think that would be an overreach. But I would leave that to you and open to hear the rest of the board. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee.
Trustee Sriskandaraja, you know, it's a letter from the chair to write, so it is implied that it will be reviewed related to the thing, so it could be incorporate that, or you can make an amendment now to say relevant. Wait 1 second, Associate Director Leola Pond is going to speak as well.
Through the chair, if I can perhaps assist, at least from the point of view from staff. As Trustee Payne mentioned earlier, we did work with the trustees to try to find common ground on this. And so from our perspective, my assumption would be relevant policies and procedures, because of course there will be many procedures that are not even close to touching on this. And in order to have an investigation that could proceed quite expeditiously, I believe that was an assumption we applied. So whether it's actually expressly put in this motion or not, I think the ultimate goal that I believe the Board of Trustees, Trustee Pay as well, all staff, is that we want to find ways, if there are gaps in our policies, to improve them. If there's greater clarity that we can get from the Ministry of Education or other bodies to help support the work we need to do, then we would like to do that. So my understanding is that it is the relevant policies and procedures. I think that's a reasonable interpretation of that. Whether the trustees would like to expressly state that in this motion, it's up to the trustees. I do think the spirit of the currently written motion is to do as Trustee Pay and the others have, and Trustee Shishwaran Raja has mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Associate Director. That was exactly my intention for bringing this up, because we do have a timeline that we're asking for. And we want to, of course, as was mentioned by other trustees previously, we want this to be dealt with in a timely manner. That was my intention for asking that we make it concise so it doesn't, you know, drag on. But I think, as was mentioned, if that is the spirit of what will go in the letter, then I'm fine with the way it is and leave it up to the chair and to the movers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Pay. Trustee Dawson?
Thank you, through the chair. I have a procedural question. I'd like to move a motion after this motion. Do I need to do that now, or am I speaking to this motion?
You're speaking to this motion right now.
Okay. I would like to make an amendment that under I, a review of relevant policies and procedures.
Okay, do you have a seconder for it? Trustee King? Okay, any discussion on that? Trustee Laskin?
I'm very confused. The minister's not coming in to review all our policies and procedures. The minister is coming in, and this is very clear. This motion is about the Grassy Narrows River Run field trip investigation. And I think we heard from Executive Officer, Vitaly Plotnikov, that there were about, even here, about the excursion policy and protests, there could be, I believe I heard you say about 15 relevant policies and procedures, if that can just be clarified. Mr. Chair, to staff, how many policies and procedures would touch this that you would think are relevant?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we did a quick review, scan of all existing, about 84 existing policies and roughly 155 operational and governance procedures. And we identified about 11 policies, relevant policies, and 15 operational procedures.
Thank you very much. So I just want to, I guess, ask the mover that this whole motion is about the Grassy Narrows field trip investigation. It wasn't inviting the ministry in to review all our policies and procedures, but the relevant policies and procedures that would affect the outcome to provide advice to the board on what might need changing. So for clarity, if one of my colleagues interpreted it that it's supposed to go over our 155 policies and our 100 and whatever number procedures, we won't get a quick result, and we need a quick result. So I assumed it was just the relevant policies, but I actually ask you, instead of an amendment, to just incorporate that so that there's clarity on what it is we're asking for. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Right, correct. What I just mentioned about is about an investigation and the collaboration or cooperation of the full board, It's really not about like what a policy, the ministry is going to come in, they're going to decide what the relevant policy they're going to investigate. Whether this is certain policy being violated, they're going to look into those details. I think that we should leave that to the ministry, not us. Because this motion is about our commitment for the full cooperation with the ministry for their investigation. And also, we want to make sure the public get whatever the report we're getting. So we've been transparent. Also, I think it's most important for this is we're going to try to restore the public trust, showing that we're, at the full board, we're transparent and accountable for our actions. Thank you very much.
So,
Sorry, I didn't understand.
yeah, I'm just going to get a clarification. Trustee Pei,
Yeah.
are you saying that since that's what's implied, you're okay to change that into relevant?
No, I oppose that amendment.
So, Mr. Chair, I'm respectfully, the scope of this investigation is about the Grassy Narrows excursion.
Yeah,
If we don't make it clear to the ministry, of course we'll fully cooperate.
yeah.
But we're not inviting the ministry in to look at every single policy and procedure that we have and expect this report to be done to begin to rebuild public trust by December 1st. Trustee Pei, if you want to make another motion inviting the ministry in to look over everything, that's a separate motion, in my opinion. This is about the Grassy Narrows River Run field trip investigation, and the scope of that should be kept to the Grassy Narrows River Run field trip investigation, or else you lose my support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think since the mover is not incorporating that, there is a mover and a seconder for the amendment. Is there any other speakers on the amendment? Seeing no other speakers, we'll go to a vote. Is it a correct vote?
Mr. Chair, this is Trustee Patel.
Trustee Patel, go ahead.
Thank you. And on amendment, Mr. Chair, let's make it very clear on this. what Trustee Pay is proposing and what Trustee Laskin is proposing. And I need to be very crystal clear that this motion by Trustee Pay is only related to the current issue, not to the other issues. I want to hear from Trustee Pay on this, that does this motion is only for the current issue.
Sorry, Trustee Patel, I think Trustee Pay did answer that question, but I don't know if Trustee Pay, you want to quickly respond to that in terms of what policy, the whole question is around what policies are we looking at, the policies related to excursion or all policies, and that's where the concern is.
Okay, Mr. Chair, yeah, Trustee Patel is like, yeah, we have discussion, is like, this motion are really about, the board commitment to fully cooperate with the ministry to do this investigation regarding this, future return demonstration. So I think if any policy that's relevant to this event, we're going to look into that. I mean, the ministry is probably going to look at what a policy been broken during the whole process. So that's really up to ministry, what they're going to looking for. Okay? Yeah.
Right.
Thank you, Trustee Pay, and thank you, Chair.
Yeah. So I think Trustee Patel, are you done with the questions?
Yes, I got the clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now, any other trustees speaking on the amendment to add the word relevant? Okay. All right. So the word there is, I think, adding relevant existing policies. So I think somebody took the existing out. So we need to add
No, it's there. Existing relevant.
existing relevant. Okay, it's shaped different. It's switched to. It should say relevant existing policies technically, but that's yeah. It has to be
Sure.
split.
Relevant.
Yeah. Okay. Seeing no other speakers, now we go on to a vote on this. Is it on e-scribe?
Yeah.
Okay, trustees vote on e-scribe.
Trustee Patel in favor of amendment.
Trustee Dedovitis in favor.
Trustee Arts in favor.
So hold on for a second, trustees. We are just trying to get it on e-scribe.
Okay, it's open on e-scribe. It's open.
Once it's open on e-scribe, if trustees don't have access, let us know how you would like to vote.
Mr. Chair, it's not coming up for me. I'm in favor.
Trustee Nunziata against the amendment.
Trustee Goth in favor.
Roger Closing, I'm in favor.
Trustee Bay against?
Was it goes in favor?
Wilka Rotman against.
Dawson in favor.
Trustee Arts, Trustee Dedovitis.
Trustee Arts and Trustee Didavidis, I think, said in favor, right? Trustee Didavidis?
Trustee Arts in favor.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Yeah.
Dedovitis in favor.
It's Trustee Wong here voting in favor.
Trustee Wong.
You didn't have any. Trustee Patel,
Trustee Patel, you said you're in favor.
Trustee Patel in favor.
Hastings, and Hassan.
Trustee Hastings, not in favor. And Trustee Hassan? Huh?
What's his vote?
Not in favor. Trustee Hastings.
I think we have everybody. We're closing.
I think we are closing the vote now. Thank you. Now we are back to the amended motion.
Main motion is that.
Yeah, the amendment carried. We now back to the amended motion that just has the word relevant added in front of the review of existing policies. Any other speakers on this item? Okay. Seeing no other speakers, we will move to a vote for the motion as amended.
Mr. Chair, recorded vote, please.
There's a request for recorded vote, just to make sure, so everybody, if you can vote on e-scribe, or let us know how you vote.
Mr. Chair, can we vote a seriatim?
That's Syria.
No.
Sorry, I withdraw that request.
Okay. Just give it a couple of seconds, trustees, while the scribe.
No.
The vote is now open. Please vote on eScribe or let us know if you don't have access to eScribe right now.
Through the chair, Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee Arch in favor.
Trustee Pay in favor.
Lilka Rotman in favor.
Trustee Goes in favor.
Trustee Hassan, Trustee Hastings.
Trustee Hastings in favor. Trustee Hassan? Is Trustee Hassan there?
He voted just now. He was there just now.
Trustee Hassan, are you there? Okay. Who else are you missing?
Trustee Didovitis.
Trustee Didovitis?
Trustee Patel.
In favor.
In favor. Trustee Patel?
In favor.
Trustee Sweet.
And Wong in favor.
Trustee
And Trustee Hassan in favor.
Rajiko Singham in favor.
Okay,
And who are we missing?
that's 21. Who is absent?
We got everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Sorry, Chair. Quick question here.
Right,
You
let
guys
me
got
close
my
the
last
vote,
vote wrong.
Trustee.
I said I was in favor.
Yes.
Yeah, we got that. Thanks, Trustee.
No, it says no on the screen.
Where?
No,
I don't see any
It
screen.
doesn't?
the screen hasn't come up. It
I'm
passes,
talking about the previous votes.
it passes unanimously.
No, he's talking
Okay.
about the previous.
Previous vote? Okay, that was an amendment vote. This is the one. This is the recorded vote, Trustee Hassan.
Okay.
So this passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Trustee Pay and Trustee Hastings for the motion. Now we move on to further speakers on the broader topic. Trustee Dawson?
Thank you, Chair. I have a motion that I believe I sent in advance.
Trustee Dawson's motion is just coming up on the screen. This is a two-line motion. It's to, go ahead, Trustee Dawson, if you want to explain that. And
Sure, I think it's pretty straightforward. It aligns to Trustee Pay's motion. We as a board are responsible for our policies and procedures, and our excursions policy is not scheduled to be reviewed until the 2028 school year, 2027-28 school year. So I would like to move that up to current year. I think that aligns well with the investigation. And I also, you know, I've had some ongoing concerns anyway about our excursion policy. I represent the downtown core in Spadina and Fort York, as well as Davenport. And, you know, one of my schools has a longstanding encampment. There are safe injection sites closing. And how are we equipping our students for those realities on excursions? So if they're doing nature walks, municipal walks, I was very alarmed the other day to be out with my children and a friend, and one of the friends picked up a crack pipe from the ground and didn't know what it was. And nobody had explained that to him. So I do think that we have chosen to live downtown. We can't ignore the realities of downtown. But just as with some of the comments mentioned before about safety overall at protests, there are other safety concerns to consider that should be captured in this policy. So that's just one example. And I do think that, you know, with the protest piece, irrespective of the topic, there are safety considerations to be made that are not captured in the current policy. So I think it aligns well with our meeting tonight and with Trustee Pay's motion. Thank you.
thank you, Trustee Dawson. Is it Trustee Earhart who's seconding this motion, or whose motion?
It says Trustee Laskin, but I'm also happy to
Sorry.
second. Either one is okay by me.
Trustee Laskin, Trustee Laskin is seconding it?
I'm happy to second it. I do sit on the Governance and Policy Committee right now, and so I may just note in that way. Apologies, I'm supposed to be standing. We're in special committee or a special meeting. Yes, we, as a member of Governance and Policy, I support this motion. Thank you, Trustee Dawson.
Okay, thank you. Any speakers on this motion? Seeing none, we will go to eScribe for voting on this motion.
Trustee Patel in favor.
Trustee Patel, give us a second. Okay, now you could say. Trustee Patel in favor.
Trustee Patel in favor.
Trustee Arts in favor.
Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Trustee De Levitis in favor.
Trustee goes in favor.
And Trustee Hassan in favor.
Rajiko Singham in favor.
Wong in favor.
Trustee Pei.
Trustee Pei in favor.
Who are we missing?
Trustee Nunziata.
Trustee Nunziata and Trustee Hastings. Trustee
Through the
Hastings.
chair, Trustee Nunziata in favor.
Okay, both in favor. Trustee Hastings in favor.
Yeah, we're good.
That's it. That passes unanimously as well. Thank you, everyone. Any other speakers on the item, main item? You had already spoken on. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Just a quick question for staff. When can we expect an update on the anti-Semitism policy?
Thank you, and through the chair, right now, we are still in the process of looking at each of the two-year plans, and we'll provide greater guidance around the specific timeframe for each of them in the October set of reports. Thank you. October.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Seeing or hearing none, we will move on from this item over to the next item, which is adjournment. Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Trustee Rajwani,
Patel.
Trustee Dawson. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, that's carried. Thank you all trustees for joining. The PSSC meeting will continue, so those members and other trustees are also welcome to continue to stay for the PSSC meeting that will continue. Thank you, trustees, for making it to the special meeting.